All right, good morning. On behalf of the ALLT 2020 Fall Forum organizing team, I would like to welcome you all. The ALLT Fall 2020 Forum is organized in collaboration with Zayed University and the Higher Colleges of Technology. My name is Dr. Lana Khiasat, and I will be moderating the sessions in Virtual Room 5 until 11:30. The presentation for each speaker will be for 15 to 20 minutes maximum, followed by 5-minute discussion. You are welcome to write your questions in the chat box function during the presentation. As the moderator, I will collate your questions and pass them to the presenter in the last 5 minutes of the session. I will give a polite reminder to the speaker of the time remaining after 15 minutes of the talk has passed. I would like also to remind you that our distinguished keynote speakers will bring the forum to a close from 2 to 3:20 in the virtual room number 6. Please be sure to join the keynote sessions. I hope you obtain an insightful shift in your approach to teaching and learning online whilst you participate in the second ALLT online forum. Now, could I now welcome Olga Samsonova to deliver the session on blended learning approach in UAE higher education, a selected annotated bibliography. She will introduce herself to the audience and start her presentation.
Hi, good morning, colleagues. Like Hannah said, I'm Dr. Olga Samsonova. I'm a lecturer in Higher Colleges of Technology in UAE. And today I want to present my annotated bibliography on blended learning approach in UAE higher education. This is part of my research process. I am doing an experimental study, like similar to the one that my colleague presented before, but my study on blended learning, instruction, and higher education. And the first step of my research study was to find a research study on blended learning related to United Arab Emirates region. So for this specific study, I found 20 studies for my literature review, and I've been focusing on themes emerged from the studies, and those studies are related to United Arab Emirates institutions, higher education institutions, as well as comparing those institutions to other institutions in the region. Like I said, my study is about blended learning approach, and 20 studies can be chosen for my literature review. So those are emerging themes that appear from my researches, and they related to students and instruction technology readiness and attitudes, their views and experiences with blended learning approach, blended learning tools and technologies, their resources, and impact that blended learning makes on students and instructor and higher education in United Arab Emirates. So the first topic, the first theme that I found was student attitudes towards technology and e-learning in United Arab Emirates. And the first study that I want to present was analyzing the values before, during, and after experience with e-learning in United Arab Emirates institutions. If before, researchers found that the studies were related to flexibility and convenience, that related to e-learning and as well as cultural and family perceptions. During the e-learning process, functional values change towards the role of instructor, positive experience with technology, different social media platforms such as YouTube and LinkedIn, as well as satisfaction with online curriculum. And after the study, after experience with e-learning, authors found that functional values change to academic achievement, career advancement, and employment opportunities. The next authors, such as Andrew et al., found that technology very beneficial in the classroom, the higher education classroom, improves learning, and as well as they found that paper, books, and laptops were chosen as preferred learning tools in higher educational institutions. But tablets and phones were less favored by students. Another study that was made in 2011 found that Even 93% of the students said that e-learning enhance students' technical skills and make students more independent learners, as well as they said they improve their performance, and they stated that e-learning positively contributes to their learning experience. However, this study made in 2011 found that 78% of the male students and 63% of female students, they prefer face-to-face communication. The next theme that I found was instructor attitudes in technology reading. The first study I want to focus on is a study provided data when the authors compared two private universities in the United Arab Emirates, and they found that there is no significant difference between technology readiness, behavior intentions, and attitudes in universities. They also found that there is readiness, moderate level of readiness for technology for both universities, as well as another study found that human interaction were found as a preference mode for interaction among instructors in both universities. And preference to face-to-face interaction was slightly higher in Egypt because, based on the author's conclusion, this fact was explained by the fact that in UAE, most of the instructors are expats, and they must do e-learning based on the university. My next topic was experience with blended learning approach. My favorite article was Al-Mansouri and Akhtar article dated 2016. Those authors made a wonderful roadmap for blended e-learning, and they proposed to follow this roadmap in order to do the further research on blended learning approach. They mentioned that when we, as academic researcher, will focus on blended learning on future, we have to focus on characteristics and role of the student in blended learning, characteristics and role of the teacher, social aspects related to the blended learning approach, as well as the course design. The next study that I want to focus on is the HASAT study that said experiences with blended learning approach. Students in United Arab Emirates institution said that they prefer independent work compared to the working in groups. They also he also mentioned that due to the cultural aspect, United Arab Emirates students, they prefer connect their educational studies to their personal life, and they prefer flexible blended learning course structure compared to the rotation course. It was not their favorite, and since it didn't meet their needs. As well as the research found that interaction level and faculty personalities were the main elements in blended learning environment. And there are other made recommendations, which is such interesting recommendations that I'm using in my work with my students and for my study. First of all, in blended learning, we're supposed to avoid tribal issue and be very careful assigning group work and give students a very flexible way to join those groups. The next recommendation was that teachers, instructors supposed to create a very joyful blended learning environment, and this environment must relate to the student's personal life and use local examples in creating instruction materials. The next study I want to focus on is the CAMP study made in 2013. He discovered very interesting implications for pedagogical changes in order to use blended learning approach in higher education. Like I said, like the previous author mentioned, CAMP said that we have to consider cultural background of our students. We have students need to have a very clear written and verbal teacher's direction in blended learning course. Author also said that diagnostic, perceptive, and other feedback would give blended learning classes more structure. He also mentioned that instructors have to guide students over online material and facilitate online discussion. As well as very interesting finding was that students are struggling to find the literacy mentioned in the blended courses. So in author stage, we have to embed the instructor has to embed all the materials they want students to go over into the LMS, as well as conduct research workshops in order to make students to be familiar themselves with the literature provided in the blended learning class. As well as author mentioned that all the changes that will happen from written to electronic assessment must be very precise. The next study I want to mention, Musa study said that 43% of their participants prefer face-to-face interaction and only 30% prefer blended learning. Tamim in 2018 mentioned that face-to-face sessions and blended learning support students, and technical problems and faculty profiles were mentioned as blended learning weakness. Video was found as a cultural issue based on the Tamim study. And also the study found that blended learning approach works as a support for female students in United Arab Emirates to overcome social, geographical, and professional boundaries. Another interesting study I want to mention, made in 2016, made by Shanta Kumari and Stacey, found that blended learning approach was perceived as a more effective and less stressful way to educate themselves. Students found themselves that blended learning approach made them to improve their communication skills with classmates and teachers. They found that blended learning approach is very easy to follow, the course content. They like Moodle learning platform, as well as researchers found that faculty and student technology training will support everybody in order for this approach to be successful. The next topic I found was about blended learning tools and technologies related to mobile learning and social networking sites. Mobile learning was found by UAE students as a positive experience, and two critical issues were found. The first one, ways to use phones, and the second one, technical and ethical concerns associated with the phone usage. And one of the researchers made recommendation for possible ways of classroom usage of phones. The first one, use it to search and share information in a classroom, use spreadsheets and calculators, use presentation, PowerPoint, and answer instructor questions, as well as evaluate specific course-related questions. In terms of social networking sites, I was found that social media tools are very valid for social interactions, and Twitter and WhatsApp were called the favorite for communication with instructors among the United Arab students, higher education students, and as well as recommendations being made for better social networking utilization, and I really like them, and I would like to use them in my work. So instructors supposed to have, an institution supposed to have 3-point remedy, such as academic integrity policies for social networking sites, blocking social networks during the exam, as well as report and punish cheaters, and use networks as educational tools. The next topic that I found in my bibliography was blended learning resources. And I found mentions about Blackboard Learn, video content, online discussions, and Google Docs. In terms of Blackboard, authors found that Blackboard makes students more accountable and independent. It was found that students prefer a mix of Blackboard and traditional instruction, and as well as some of the study found that Blackboard is very good for research sharing, communication, and compatibility with other programs such as PowerPoint and Excel and etc. In terms of video content, I found the study about those specific apps like Education and Kamatasia. And this study made by Ahmed Amarkoudi in 2015, those apps were found very useful for voice recording. And their study, 69% of the students said they prefer study to the videos. And as well as they stated they prefer to have tutorials for all the problems they have in their classrooms. and they prefer their own instruction to make the tutorial videos. The next topic I want to talk about is online discussions, and one of the study made by Professor Hassan and Hamidi 2016. Those authors were comparing master and bachelor students' perception on online discussion, and they found that most of the students prefer discussion and group work rather than individual tasks. And they also mentioned that for instructor and higher education to make their online discussion more comprehensive in order to make a comprehensive feedback to everybody that makes students to learn more from those feedbacks. And the last resource I want to mention is Google Docs. There was research made by Instewa and Aburizik. I'm so sorry for pronunciation. It was made in 2015 about Google Docs, and they found that Google Docs promotes instructor and student interaction. It made instructional and student collaboration better. And the last topic that I want to mention that I found out of my 20 articles that I found was blending learning approach in class. The study that I want to mention was
reminder.
That's the last one.
Thank you.
Yes, the study was made by Aldala Shata in Abu Dhabi in 2019. The study was about the math courses, but it gives very good conclusions to my presentation and the perception on the study review. They found that blending learning approach supported students to perform better in cognitive and cognitive thinking skills. It also says that learners can browse an instructional content in any time they want. It's inconvenience for them. As well as the study found that blending learning approach in assessment diminishes frustration and anxiety. And the authors also suggested that blending learning they suggested to integrate this approach into math courses, since based on their opinion, online communication and flipped learning support students and solving any problem. I am done. There is a reference on all my 20 articles that I found. Let me mention the fact that this study was done before coronavirus crisis, and kind of there is no bias related to coronavirus, and I like all the findings that I have. They support our teaching mode right now during online learning related to COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Olga, for a very comprehensive bibliography and very interesting findings, I have to say. I would like to invite the participants to post their questions in the chat box for Olga. And also, I would like to thank you, Olga, for citing one of my research as well in your bibliography. Yes. So I've done it several years ago, and like you said, it's still relevant and it's not biased by the pandemic.
Yes, it's not. And trust me, it's support as of right now, since every one of us is supposed to teach online. Based on my findings, I personally do give my students freedom to choose groups, and it works perfectly. They prefer to work with their friends, and the results I'm having from those group work, it's amazing.
Yes.
And I use a lot of findings from it in my current practice. Mm-hmm.
I think also Jai joins me in thanking you for your comprehensive bibliography, for sharing that. And I would like to also ask a few questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
We have a few more minutes. You mentioned applying the 3-point remedy for social media resources. How are you applying it in this pandemic, and how did you find it useful?
The problem is, as the research, as the researcher said, this 3-point remedy must come from administration. I didn't mention it here, but in research, it must come from administration. I try to apply it. However, like all the students and all the faculty, we have to follow our administration support. So I think it must have from the top. and we have to have a special, and the authors also mentioned that's supposed to be a specific policy made by institution administration and given to instructors and students as well to follow.
Absolutely, yes. If it's not an institutional approach, it doesn't work. I've also found that in my study. Yeah.
Yes, if it goes from the instructor, students are questioning, and then the questioning, and we're supposed to have kind of background. We have to have backup. Say, okay, administration send the email. This is something we have to follow.
We have a question from Serene asking, what are the difficulties that low achievers have encountered while using this blended learning approach and using this kind of technology and methods?
Yes, in terms of low achievers, like I said, a lot of findings were made saying that face-to-face interactions will support low achievers, face-to-face sessions. Again, we're talking about not fully online delivery. We're talking about blending learning approach when students can talk to the teacher through the Zoom or over the phone. And this is support face-to-face or over the phone live interaction will support low achievers. Yep. And as well as what I want to mention, as well as mentioned in the research that teachers supposed to give a supportive feedback, supporting low achievers, as well to give examples and give instructional video and tutorial for those low achievers. And another thing, from my side, from my point of view, the fact that students have an opportunity to access any information at any time they want, it gives them support, as well as repeatedly access this information if it's still not clear.
Thank you. I'm also wondering about the blended learning resources that you have summarized in here and you have found. Which of those would you recommend and you feel there is a good use of it for going fully online in our kind of this pandemic situation?
I would recommend Blackboard. This is something that can, like, if you see here, Daouk and Abdallah, they mentioned that Blackboard is very compatible with other programs. So we can embed anything in our Blackboard. We can embed video, which are supportive. We can embed online discussion. Everything can be embedded there. It needs to be normally structured and very easily for students to navigate with. And I think Blackboard is the best online resource from my point of view as an instructor.
And finally, any recommendations you would have for pedagogical changes based on your findings? Yes.
Pedagogical changes. You have to fully understand that this specific research was made about United Arab students, right? Based on their culture, based on everything. And I really, really believe in the fact where the teacher works with kind of a specific population, the teacher must to think about the culture, their specification, their differences. And if you wanted to talk about pedagogical changes, I want to talk about specific pedagogical changes for UAE students, what I would like to use, right? Now, I am personally working with girls, right? And there's the teachers who are working with male teachers. So what I would do as a teacher, number one, like I mentioned, I would group students based on their interest, number one. Number two, I would make my content that I post on the Blackboard or any other from all the content must relate to the culture and specific beliefs of the student. Number three, based on my research, I found that face-to-face interactions are preferable. So I would give more time from the point of view of the instructor, give more time for interaction with the students. Those are changes I would make.
Thank you very much. And if there are no further questions or comments, I would like to thank you again for your presentation. And I would like to invite the audience to provide their feedback in the link that has been given in the chat. Thank you, Olga, for your presentation. and very interesting discussion.
Thank you.